Good evening, welcome to Vintage Key Studio. I got my handbag, I got the piano, and I'm on fire. Let's go. Now, avid followers of Vintage Key Studio on here, on the YouTubes, will probably have noticed that I haven't done a video for quite some time. And the reason is I'm not completely lazy. I've been repairing the studio mixing console, amongst other things. The studio mixing console, if you recall, is a 1978 D&R ST1600, which is over there, and it's on its back at the moment. And I've repaired smaller consoles in the past and got them working well enough to use them again. This one does actually work, and it has worked all the way through it, but it's infuriating because once I get into a project, I find it very hard to not sort of go the full whack into it. So one thing I'd done on there was okay. I thought, oh, I could do that on the other one. And I ended up basically replacing most of the components in every board, which didn't actually take very long to do, but the main problem that I've had was working out how I was going to put the thing back together, because as you may, if you have followed this mixer in the past that I've talked about, as you may recall, it was connected together. There was no plugs. It was just connected together with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bare, sort of like stiff bare wires. So it was all bus wires between all of the boards. So the way they constructed it is they built the frame, they'd stuck all the cards together on there and screwed it all down, and then someone had gone through, threaded all of the wires through, and then soldered them all in. So they're all soldered together, so there was no handy plugs to undo. It was all hardwired, which was really, really good for using it as a console for a good 40, nearly 50 years. But the moment you need to get in there and try and repair anything, you find that unless you cut all the wires, you can't get in to take any components out. And I tried, but it just ended up ruining loads of bits of it. By the way, this video isn't sponsored by anybody. There are other things you can wipe your bottom with. So as you can see, it looks a bit of a nest of rats. I tried various different ways to connect it all together. I tried some little is it IDC cable things, and they ended up being completely useless, especially because the wires were so thin and rubbish. And I'd not done that before. I'd not used IDC, which is something about displacement of, I can't remember, connectors. You stick them together. They're like little, you've probably seen them, like the little, well, like these things. You can see those. You thread the wire through there, and then you sort of clamp it together and squeeze it, and it goes click, 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 and then they're sort of all together. So I've, as well as repairing this, I've had to learn how to do a lot of stuff, which has been quite good, but very, very, very boring and annoying, because it's like every waking moment for the last 3 months has been thinking about this and repairing it. I got to the stage where I got to the very last channel, and there was still maybe 2 or 3 along the way that didn't work at all because there was a fault somewhere on the board. Because when I took it all to pieces, I noticed that lots of the tracks were all peeling off, and because it was, you know, I don't know how it had been kept before I had it, but it hadn't really been looked after very well. So what I ended up doing after repairing most of it is starting to rebuild it. But then I had to work out how I was going to rebuild it and how to do it. And as you can see on here, this looks very highly skilled and professional with bits of tape. What I've done is I've managed to sort of salvage that's the input transformer. It's quite good, this thing. It's got input transformers on every single microphone input, and they sound very nice, those. But I managed to take them off the original board. It was originally on there somewhere. So I took them off, put them onto this new piece of Vero board, whatever you call it. and looked at the schematic drawings and then sort of reconstructed them on here. But I also added some bits as well, because I found that the main problem I had with it originally was there was a line select. There's a switch with a mic, line and remix, it says. In fact, you can see that on the, I don't know if you can see that down there.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I'll say, so yes, so there was a the input switch, and what that did was it would take either what would have been the tape inputs from a tape recorder, or the line inputs from a sort of like a device, or possibly an instrument or whatever, or another machine of some description, or it had mic inputs. So it was mic, line, or remix, it was called. And the remix one was okay because that was like a separate circuit, but the line and the mic ones, they were separate circuits when you switched them, but the plugs they were attached to were just one jack. So the mics and the lines were attached to one jack, which meant that if you had, say, for instance, a reverb unit or something plugged into that jack and you inadvertently switched it to mic, and the mic selector, it had the potential of sending 48 volts of phantom power down it, which was a bit of a design flaw, I found. So what I've done is I've redesigned that bit so the mic input now is separate, completely separate, and it switches to the line at a different point in the circuit. And the other thing that I've done is this thing it's obviously got balanced microphone inputs, but didn't have any balanced outputs on it. So I've added a balanced line out somewhere there. So every channel will now be sent out of the thing balanced eventually. I've only done 2 of those at the moment. So I've got another 30 of those to do, but they only take about 10 minutes to make. So as you can see, I've stuck all the bits and sort of screwed them on there. This is all totally not being used, apart from a few switches that I've kind of put in there. This is like the practice run one, because I was just finding out whereabouts on the board I had to attach it to. The other thing I've done on this is I've completely redesigned the monitor and master out section, because before, well, it didn't work at all. This was a very confusing board, and I didn't have any schematic drawings for it that I could read. They're all very blurred. There's not a lot of documentation on this. Even the company that made it originally hasn't really got anything anymore. I mean, it was a long time ago. And I think they only made about 15 of these mixers originally. But it sounds so good, it's worth doing. I mean, I'm very pleased I've done it. So yes, I've sort of reconditioned the power supply as much as possible. I sort of have utilised all of the bits and pieces that were there already, and then added some more parts. But so now we have a brand new stereo master out. So we've got like the mix out, which I think is that part, the mix amp, and then I'm sort of like a line amp, which has now got stereo balanced outputs. And they didn't have those before, so it's got balanced outputs on there. And then after that stage, it comes out of there and goes into this, which is the stereo monitor amp, with various other little bits and pieces in it as well. And what I've done is I've added a mono switch on it. It had a mono switch already, but now I've added it so you can listen to the left-hand side of the stereo in mono, or the right-hand side of the stereo in mono. So I've added like another couple of amps and bits in there, and an extra switch here. And then I've redone the auxiliary mixing amps. And I made these with some sort of fairly easy schematics from a company in Australia, I think, called ESP. There's a link below this video under where it's got all the information about stuff to the website, where I found quite a lot of interesting and useful information on mixer design. which helped me kind of elaborate on this and add bits to it. So you might like to have a look at that as well. All of the little amplifiers and things, the op amps I used on these were the NE5532s, which are used on, I call them the spiders. I don't know if I've got any on the floor here, but they were used, or they are used quite readily in pro audio stuff, like in Neve equipment. I found quite a lot of them. They had them in the Hill audio desk I used to have. Well, I've still got it, but it's up on its side at the moment. This thing actually originally uses TL074CNs. So they're like quad op amps. So there's 4 little amplifiers inside there for each. You can't really see them from that angle, but yeah. So they're sort of like 14-pin ICs, integrated circuits. And then the NE5532s are the tiny little 8-pin ones, which are spiders. Anyway, quite technical, and I don't really know what I'm talking about. But I think I've got a bit of a flavour of how to fix mixers by a sort of a good sense of smell, because I can usually smell when something's not right, especially if it's burning. And I sort of listen to things, and I sort of just like put a probe in there and have a listen and think, oh, that sounds horrible, or that sounds rather nice, or that. And then I try a different resistor or a different part, and then I think, oh, that sounds even better. If it's not clear, go through at various points where you know the signal path is going to, and sort of put a little probe attached to some sort of device you can hear it. I won't go into too much detail because you could quite nastily electrocute yourself doing that if you don't know what you're doing. Especially if you're using some sort of valve equipment. Luckily this isn't valve equipment, but it's still got quite a punch of quite an incredible current going through it, because it's obviously geared up, those power supplies geared up to power 32 times 5, what's that, 150, 160 op amps, all running 4 amplifiers inside each one. So there's quite a lot of power going on. And I've knackered my knees doing this job, and but I must hand it to the guy who I'm sorry, I can't pronounce his name. Is it Duco something or other? The guy who designed this. And I think it's a fantastic design and absolutely brilliant, and it sounded great, and it still sounds good now, but it's really atrocious to try and repair. But they did a very good job in protecting his idea, because I think your average person who didn't have the time, well, I haven't actually really had the time, but somebody who didn't have the inclination or the dedication to repair this thing would give up after 5 minutes, because it's absolutely atrocious trying to repair it and get in there without having to cut millions of wires. And even the little nut things that go on there that secure the pots to the front panel, they're not standard sort of like nuts. They're these quite nice things with the 4 holes in them, and you need either a special tool to undo them, or like the are they called needle nose pliers? I use needle nose pliers, and they've got like a kind of a textured part underneath, but they're actually very good because they do hold things in securely. But it's just like at every point during this, you think, well, I'll just take that off there. And you think, oh gosh, it's going to take like 15 years. And it did take 15 years. But never mind. It's nearly all done now. But the good thing is I've been able to use the studio. I've been able to use the studio while this has been going on, because obviously I've got other equipment. So I've been using Neve channel strips and all sorts of things over there. And I actually have been using this as well, because you could take out. The way I've done repaired it is I've done it in sets of 8. So the first 8 worked fine. So I was using that for a while for a session, but the rest of it was all in the workshop. But it'd be nice one day if I had some help. But anyway, yes. So that's what I've been doing for the past 3 months. And it's been miserable. Because the thing is, I've had all sorts of things. We've had quite a lot of donations to the studio. I've said it before about this wonderful synthesizers.com sort of Moog modular type replica thing. And I've only switched it on 3 times, and I really want to get into that, and I'll do a video about that. We've got this theremin, which I can't play. We've got vocoders coming out of our ears. We've got this one as well, which I've had for over a year now, which is another modular Eurorack thing, which makes some quite nice sounds. I recently got an old keyboard called a Solette, which is like a sort of an organ from the 50s, which is quite interesting. So I'm going to do a video on that one. And there's the old Miller organ over there, which I've had for quite a while. So I've got loads of stuff I need to get to do it. But once I'm hoping within the next day to stick this back in there and move the mixer back to where it is, and then concentrate on some other stuff. So that's that. In other news, there's been some excitement in the fact that about 5 years ago, Louisa and I did some recordings, and over the last 5 years, with the English producer who lives in Australia, Mark Pritchard, and we have done quite a lot of stuff with him. And we also have done some recordings for Thom Yorke as well, because Thom Yorke, if you don't know, is the singer from Radiohead, so we've done some singing, and I haven't done any singing. Louisa's done some singing. I did some piano playing and some various bits and pieces on some recordings and stuff for their forthcoming album, Tall Tales, which sounds very nice. We've had a bit of a listen to it. It's coming out on the 9th of May, and hopefully around about then we'll also have a bit of an interview with Mark. He's agreed to have a bit of a chat with us to remind me what I did, because I can't remember what I did. And but yeah, it was all throughout COVID we were doing these recordings for him, and so that's interesting. And the other thing I should just mention very quickly is I got some LPs done of my stuff. So if you happen to be interested, we did a live version of the bits of this maybe a year ago. This is an album I made in 2003, and yes, it's quite nice. But yeah, it comes in a sleeve with a sleeve inside, and then there's a record there. See, that's that one. That's the children's TV themes one, and there's the music for department stores one, which is quite nice. Matt Berry tried to get a copy of this off me years ago when I actually released it on CD in 2006. And I said, "Who the hell are you?" And he said, "I'm Matt Berry." I said, "Oh," and I didn't know who he was. Anyway, so yes, so that one's there as well. And if you're interested in those two, they're available if you look on the link somewhere on the website or something like that. There's also soon going to be the Goose and the Crow album, which is already out to listen to, I think, but that's going to be out as of an LP as well. It's nice having LPs. So yes, I think that's all for this little brief bulletin. But say next week we're going to have a nice interview with Mark, and a bit of a demo of some of the techniques we used in recording his sessions for Tall Tales, which would be great. But I think that's enough talking for now. I'll just do a little bit of playing just to sort of sign out. Here's some David Bowie, and I'll sing a little bit as well. Good night. Do you want to do that again?